Greetings, Earthlings! Today we're going to be reviewing a portable podcast studio / mixer / interface. Very cool. So today we are reviewing this guy, the Rodecaster Pro, which is a portable podcasting studio or mixer or interface. And it may not come with stickers, but it does come with a poster-sized specification sheet. What are you thinking, Rode? Come on! But if you do want to pick up this guy, it'll set you back around $600, like always, links down below. And in the sake of full transparency, I do need to disclose that Rode sent me the Rodecaster Pro kit for the sake of doing this review. Now, for the majority of this review, I will be running the Procaster direct into the Rodecaster Pro with the input gain set at 32 decibels and the fader set to unity, which is the 5th notch below the top. None of the onboard processing is currently enabled, and I won't be doing any kind of post-processing, but I may boost it in post, so check the doobly-doo to see what I did. Now let's talk about what comes in the box, even though mine came in a backpack, and they don't all come in backpacks, so it's too heavy to throw. Of course, you will get the Rodecaster Pro. You will get a USB-C to USB-A cable. You'll get the necessary power cord. You'll get a couple of soundboard cards so you can note what kind of sounds are on the soundboard, and you'll get some poster-sized documentation. When it comes to the build quality of this device, it feels really well put together and very sturdy. The entire face of this device is all metal, which makes it feel premium and like it could take a beating, while on the other side, the bottom of this device is plastic with some rubber feet to keep it from sliding around on your desk, and I'm guessing they did this to save a little bit of weight. The headphone volume controls have absolutely no wobble to them, and they do have stepped dials, which is very nice and tactile. The faders, on the other hand, do have a little bit of wiggle when you move them left and right, but I don't think it's that far out of the ordinary. And lastly, the Neutrik XLR connectors have almost no movement to them when a microphone is connected. Now let's go ahead and walk through every button, fader, and dial that's on this thing. On the top of the device, the first thing you will find are 4 buttons numbered 1 to 4. This will allow you to select the microphone that you want to make any adjustments to. Beneath each of those buttons, you will find a dedicated fader for each of those microphone inputs. Next, you'll find a USB computer playback fader. You'll also find a fader to control the volume of the 3.5mm TRRS input on the rear. You'll find a fader to control the volume of the Bluetooth connected device. And lastly, you will find a fader to control the volume of the soundboard. On the note of the soundboard, you do have 8 programmable buttons which you can assign sounds to and change the color of with an app on your computer. Directly beneath the faders, you'll find a set of solo buttons which will light up green, but you will also find a set of mute buttons in case you don't want to hear somebody talking. Now, when we move up to the top of the device, you will find this very nice touchscreen, which allows you to make adjustments to your microphones or your processing or the phone input or anything like that. Next to the screen, you will find this very large record button to both start and stop the recording. You can see that it shows in very large text how long you've been recording for, and it makes it very easy to add markers to your recording. Next to the record button, we got 4 headphone volume controls, and I do want to note that headphone 1 controls the 3.5mm headphone jack on the front, as well as headphone output 1 on the rear of the device. And the last thing that we have is a monitor volume control, which controls the monitor outs on the rear of the Rodecaster. Now, as I alluded to, on the front of the device, you will find a 3.5mm headphone jack in case you want to use 3.5mm headphones. And then we got the back of the device, and the first thing you will find is a power button to turn on or off the Rodecaster Pro. Next to that, you will find the power input to power the device. You'll find a USB-C port. You'll find an SD card slot. You'll find a set of monitor outputs to run this to your powered monitors. You'll find 4 1/4-inch headphone outputs, a single 3.5mm TRRS phone input, and lastly, you will find 4 Neutrik XLR jacks, which only accept XLR. They are not combo jacks. Then we got the specs, but first up, I want to address a question that I have received multiple times over the last week. This is only a stereo device, meaning it does not allow you to record multi-track to your computer, and it does not record multi-track to the SD card. Everything on this thing that is being run in is being downmixed to a single stereo track. But then as far as the conversion, we have a single bit depth of 24 bit and a single sample rate of 48 kilohertz. The microphone inputs have a gain range of 0 to 55 decibels. They have an input impedance of 600 ohms. We got an EIN of 125 decibels, and we got a phantom power provided of 48 volts. Now I'm going to go ahead and measure the noise floor of one of the microphone pre's using a method outlined in Julian's video in one of the upper corners. And I do want to note that while I am measuring the noise floor, I have the fader set to unity gain, which is the 5th notch below the top, which is something that I verified with Rode. Now, in order to really test out the gain, I have the Shure Sm7b connected directly to the Rodecaster Pro. My input gain is set at 45 decibels, and the fader is set to the 5th notch below the top, which is the unity gain. I verified that with Rode, and this is the level we are getting, and this is how it sounds. And I will shut up so you can hear the line noise generated while you're driving the Sm7b. When it comes to the latency, we do only have one conversion option at 24-bit 48 kilohertz, and with an I/O buffer size of 64 samples, we got an 8 millisecond round trip or 3.5 milliseconds output. When we jump up to 128 samples, we have 10.6 milliseconds round trip, or 4.7 milliseconds out. And when we jump up to 256 samples, we have a round trip latency of 16 milliseconds, or 7.5 milliseconds output. Now I want to demonstrate the audio quality that you could get if somebody were to call into your phone over a VoIP service like Discord, and you sent that over Bluetooth to the Rodecaster Pro. But I also want to check what the mix minus sounds like on the other end of the line.
All right, so now I'm in the other room calling into the Discord voice chat, which is then being sent over Bluetooth to the Rodecaster Pro. This should give you a pretty decent idea of the audio quality that you would get on a recording if somebody called into your show using a decent voice client like Discord. And now I'm back in the studio, but I am still recording audio on the Discord machine. That way you're able to hear what your caller would hear when they are calling in. So this is the type of voice that they would hear.
Okay, so I'm still sitting in the other room running through the exact same audio setup, but now I'm connecting my phone to the Rodecaster Pro using a 3.5 millimeter to 3.5 millimeter cable. And I'm doing this to show you that if you want the best audio quality, you should opt to go the 3.5 millimeter TRRS cable route instead of using Bluetooth. All right, so we're not going to walk through every single feature on this thing because Rode has a bunch of tutorials on their channel, but what we will do is go ahead and walk through all the processing options and show you how it sounds with the Rode Procaster. So in order to access the menu, you're just going to click on the channel that you want to adjust, and this is the first screen that will pop up. It gives you the option for a bunch of different presets, the Rode Pod mic, which is the new mic they just announced, the Procaster, which is what I'm using, or just a generic condenser or a generic dynamic. And then if we want to do more advanced settings, we will go to Setup. This page allows you to manually adjust the gain up or down using the plus or minus buttons, turn on phantom power if you are running a FET head or a cloud lifter, or you can jump into advanced if you want to dive even further. So here you can see that I have everything turned off, and we will slowly turn on each of them to show you how it affects the sound. First, we'll go ahead and turn on the compressor, and this is how it sounds. You can hear it does boost a little bit of the noise floor, but it definitely squashes the variance between the loudest and the quietest parts of whatever you're saying into the mic. Next, we got the high pass filter, which is set to 60 Hertz, so it's not going to affect the tone of your voice too much, but it should help reduce any kind of rumbles or bumps of the desk. Next up, we have the de-esser, which is a very useful tool to help you decrease the sibilance or the harshness whenever you say words with S's in them. Next up, we got the noise gate, but before I enable that, I'm going to be quiet so you can hear the line noise and the ambient noise of this room. And now I'll enable it. And you can hear that all that ambient noise, all that background hiss really drops off. Now, one thing about noise gates is you have to be careful with them because if you start to back away from your microphone, the noise gate may think that's below the threshold and cut it off and make it sound very funny. So you need to be careful when you're using any kind of noise gate. And next we have a ducking feature, and if I'm not mistaken, the channels that have ducking turned on, the volume will be decreased when somebody else is talking. And the last two things that we have are the Aphex Big Bottom and the Aphex Oral Exciter. So let me go ahead and turn on the Big Bottom. You can hear that it really beefens up my voice and adds a lot of lower body to it without getting too boomy. It sounds really nice and fattens up your voice if you need a little bit of help like I do. And lastly, you got the Oral Exciter, and as you can hear, this adds a lot of clarity and crispiness up top. In my opinion, I'm not a fan of it. I think it adds too much, picks up too many mouth noises, just makes it sound a little bit too shrill or unpleasant. And the last thing that I want to note is that there is currently no way to adjust the settings of any of these effects. Currently, what you hear is what you get. Now, there is one more page that we can go to adjust the sound of the microphone, and that is the voice tab. And on this page, it allows you to select the tone and the strength of the voice of whoever's speaking into that channel's microphone. And depending on what tone and strength you select on this tab, this will have a direct impact on the effects that are being run on your voice. So we'll start with deep voice and soft, and this is how it sounds. We are now on medium voice and soft, and this is how it sounds. And we are now on high voice and soft, and this is how it sounds. Now we're on deep voice and medium, and this is how the audio sounds. Medium voice on a medium strength, and this is how it sounds. And high voice on medium strength, and this is how it sounds. And finally, we are on deep voice and strong, and this is how the audio sounds. We've jumped up to medium voice and strong, and this is how it sounds. And lastly, we are on high voice and strong strength, and this is how the audio sounds. Okay, so here we have the Rodecaster Pro app on my Mac. This is the app that lets you add or remove or change any of the sounds that you have on the device's soundboard. In order to change these, it's actually very easy. All you're going to do is click on it. You can choose to clear the pad, and then that will allow you to bring in your own audio file. And you can also change the color here, which will change the color on the actual device. And you have 3 different playback styles. Replay will repeat the audio file indefinitely. Play will play it all the way through once, and latch is the option that I choose for mine because it allows you to start to play the track on the pad and tap the pad a second time to stop the playback. And that's really the only functionality you have on the computer other than the firmware updater. Now we're just going to plug a bunch of different microphones in here and see how they sound through the processing, because why the hell not? Okay, one more time on the Shure SM7B on the generic dynamic preset. Input gain set at 35 decibels. I don't know why it's so low, but I have the compressor, the high pass filter, and the de-esser turned on. Let's go ahead and turn on the big bottom. That should beefen it up in the low end. Add the Oral Exciter. I don't like that at all. Turn that back off. I really don't like that setting, and there you go. And of course, we got to try out the Electro Voice RE20. My input gain is set at 35 decibels on the generic dynamic preset, compressor, high pass filter, and de-esser. Let's throw on the big bottom. That's how it sounds with the big bottom. Turn it off. Oral Exciter. Oh, I don't like that. Off, and there you go. Now I'm speaking into the Rode NT1 on the Rode NT1 preset, but I dropped the gain from 20 down to 10. This is with the compressor, high pass filter, and de-esser. We'll throw on the big bottom to beefen it up because I am not too close to it. I'm not getting much proximity effect, and this is how it sounds with the preset. Now, because this is such a popular microphone with voiceover artists, I thought I would throw it in the mix, and this is the Sennheiser MKH416, connected in the generic condenser setting. My input level is set at 10. That's weird. And I have the compressor, high-pass filter, de-esser turned on. Let's throw on the big bottom. There you go, beefing it up, give you that radio voice. Even more so than the MKH416. And there you go, that's how this sounds. And of course, we gotta handhold the Neumann TLM103 while we're testing it in the generic condenser preset, input level set at 10. Let's jump into the processing. We got the compressor, high-pass filter, de-esser turned on. Let's throw on the Aphex big bottom. There you go, beefing it up a lot. And that's how it sounds. So in my opinion, this device was just unapologetically made for one thing and one thing only, and that is podcasting. But first up, we got to talk pros and cons, and in terms of pros, this thing is just insanely easy to set up. You can honestly pull this out of the box and be recording in a couple of minutes, which is just super awesome for a beginner podcaster. I also think that the soundboard is a really nice feature, and it will make podcasting with any kind of bumpers or theme songs a lot easier and a lot of fun, because you can even throw in some sound effects and go from there. I hate myself. I also found the phone connectivity very simple and useful, especially the automatic mix minus, because mix minuses can be very confusing to set up, especially when you're just getting started. So if you're a podcaster who has a lot of remote guests, that's going to be a huge feature for you. On top of all that, I just find it very nice to have faders, solo buttons, and mute buttons at your fingertips in case you need to make any on-the-fly adjustments. Then as far as the headphone amps, they were perfectly capable of driving even my Sennheiser HD650s, which have an impedance of 300 ohms, so they are powerful enough to drive the majority of headphones. On the note of headphones, this thing has 5 headphone outputs, 4 1/4-inch on the rear and 1 3.5mm on the front, so that eliminates the need for any kind of splitter or external headphone amp, which is just awesome. I was also rather surprised with how good the latency on this thing is, although you're probably not going to be needing that because you're not going to be running any sound into your DAW, adding any processing, and sending it back out. So it's good to have, but you're probably not going to need it. Another really big pro for me was the meters on the screen. Of course, I would have liked to have seen some kind of decibel markings on them so I know exactly what I'm hitting, but they are granular enough to get a good idea of what you're setting your levels at. And then we get to the cons, and the main issue that I have with this thing is that it does downmix everything to a stereo track that eliminates your ability to make any kind of adjustments to individual tracks in post, or if you wanted to adjust any kind of processing in post, you're gonna have to apply it to the entire track, and it will also make editing a nightmare if anybody starts talking over each other. Another really big turnoff for me on this device is the inability to adjust any of the settings for the effects that are built in. That is something that I personally would love and I think would make it a lot more useful. I did email Rode and they said they currently have no plans to open it up, but I do think in the future, if they do decide to open it up, it would be easily fixed with a software update. Another big issue that I have is that this thing has no 1/4-inch inputs, meaning there's no way to run any kind of outboard gear at line level. If you do run any outboard gear, you're going to be running it through these preamps, which will add additional noise and coloration, and it's just not an optimal setup. But additionally, that lack of 1/4-inch inputs means there's no high Z inputs, so you can't connect any instruments to this thing. And then I have a couple of nitpicky cons, the first one being that I was unable to find any kind of data transfer mode, meaning when you have this connected to your computer over USB, there's no way to transfer the files from the SD card slot. You would have to remove the SD card, put it in an SD card reader, and transfer those files to your computer that way. And lastly, there's no sound libraries or presets for the soundboard, so if you have multiple podcasts, you can't say recall podcast 1 or recall podcast 2. Right now, you would just have to manually remove and add in every single sound that you want when you're switching between podcasts. But again, I think that would be a very simple fix with a software update. And finally, would I recommend this portable podcast studio mixer interface? Yes, no, and maybe? And of course, we'll walk through the use cases. First up, if you run a multiple person podcast and you live stream it to the internet, or if you prefer not to do any kind of post-processing, then 100% I would recommend this thing because I honestly don't think I've found a better device for plug and play podcasting. But on the other hand, if you would like to make any kind of adjustments to individual tracks in post, whether it be adjusting the level or adjusting the processing, or if you want to run any kind of outboard gear, then unfortunately, no, I wouldn't recommend this for you because it doesn't allow for any of that. Third, if you're a musician, no, absolutely not. This is not designed for you. It doesn't have instrument inputs. It doesn't allow for multi-tracking. This is not for musicians. I think that at this price point, you would be 1000% better served with something like the Universal Audio Aero or the Apogee Duet. So go check that out and do not buy this thing. And lastly, we got game streamers, and for them, I am a big solid maybe. But with that being said, I think the feature set on this device is nearly perfect for gamers with the noise gate, the compression, the faders, the mutes, everything. It's what a game streamer would need. But the thing that's not perfect is the price and the abundance of inputs. The reason I say that is the majority of game streamers will just need one microphone input, and here you're paying for 4 of them. So if Rode came out with a condensed version with 1 or 2 microphone inputs at a price point of $200 or $300, then 100% I would recommend that for gamers, but at this price point it's just a maybe because it really comes down to the individual and what their budget would allow. And there you have it. That is going to wrap up this marathon review of the Rodecaster Pro. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up because this took 3 or 4 days of work. I don't even know anymore. But if you hated it, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. If you want more videos like this, you can subscribe, logo beneath me. You can also become a member by clicking that blue join button beneath the video. If you want to hang out in the Discord server, I'll throw a link in the description. And I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye.